The Semmelweis Reflex. A doctor discovers how to stop women from dying in childbirth. He proves it with data, and his own colleagues have him locked in an asylum for it. Vienna, 1847. A woman gives birth. Within days, she has a fever. Within a week, she's dead. This happens so often on this ward that doctors have a name for it: childbed fever. Nobody knows why it kills. Nobody knows it's about to stop. A doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis notices something. Women who give birth at home, attended by midwives, rarely die this way. Women who give birth in his hospital, attended by doctors, die constantly. Same city, same disease, different hands. He starts asking why. The doctors on his ward do something the midwives don't. They perform autopsies in the morning, then deliver babies in the afternoon. Same unwashed hands. Semmelweis has no concept of germs. This is the year 1847. Nobody has the concept of germs yet. But Semmelweis has a hunch. Something invisible is traveling from the corpses to the mothers. He orders every doctor to wash their hands in a chlorinated lime solution before touching a patient. One change, nothing else. The mortality rate on his ward drops from 18% to 1.5% within 2 months. This should have ended the argument. The medical establishment rejected it, not quietly. Doctors were insulted by the implication that their own hands were killing patients. Semmelweis spent the next decade writing letters, running the same experiment in new hospitals, getting the same result, and being dismissed by nearly every major institution in Europe. In 1865, his colleagues had him committed to an asylum. He died 14 days later. 2 decades after his death, germ theory was confirmed. The same idea, accepted instantly once it came from scientists the establishment already trusted. The idea never changed, only the messenger did. Psychologists later named what happened to him the Semmelweis Reflex, the automatic rejection of new information when it contradicts something an institution has already decided is true. Not a considered rejection, not skepticism. A reflex, something that fires before thinking even starts. Here's what makes it a reflex and not just stubbornness. Researchers studying belief change have found that when someone is shown evidence against something they're personally invested in, the brain regions tied to physical threat detection activate before the reasoning centers do. One neuroimaging study on political conviction found that challenging a person's core beliefs lit up the same networks that respond to a predator. The brain isn't asking, is this true? It's asking, is this dangerous to me? The second question gets answered first every time. Leon Festinger described a deeper mechanism in the 1950s, cognitive dissonance. When people encounter information that contradicts a belief they hold, the brain doesn't evaluate it neutrally. It generates real, measurable discomfort. Then it drives the person to eliminate that discomfort as fast as possible. The fastest way is rarely to update the belief. It's to discredit the source. Festinger found this studying a doomsday cult where prophecy failed to happen. Instead of admitting they were wrong, the members convinced themselves their faith had saved the world from destruction. The failure didn't weaken the belief, it made the belief stronger. Under enough pressure, dissonance doesn't just resist correction, It can flip evidence itself into confirmation. This is why the response to Semmelweis was, "Never show us the data." It was, "You are offensive to the dignity of the profession." The data was never the target. The identity underneath it was. The same pattern shows up far outside medicine. Kodak's own engineer built the first digital camera in 1975. Management told him to keep it quiet because the company's entire business ran on the film that the digital camera would eventually erase. Nokia's engineers had touchscreen prototypes years before the iPhone. The warnings never survived the trip up the chain of command because each layer softened the threat just enough to stay comfortable. Excite, a search company from decades ago, had a chance to buy Google for a fraction of what it would become and turned it down because search that worked too well would have destroyed their own ad model. None of these were stupid people. Kodak had brilliant chemists. Nokia had brilliant engineers. The Vienna doctors were educated men at the top of their field. The reflex isn't a failure of intelligence. It's what happens when new information carries an implication that threatens the identity of the person who would have to accept it. Psychologists call this identity protective cognition. The more central a belief is to who you think you are, the more your brain treats a challenge to it as a threat to your survival, not just your argument. Institutions are just minds at scale, and minds protect what they already decided they are. Now, put yourself in a leadership meeting. Someone brings you evidence that a process you built is causing harm, or a product you champion is losing to a competitor, or a decision you made a year ago is quietly failing. The data is clean, the logic holds, and you feel something before you've even finished reading it. Irritation, defensiveness, an urge to find the flaw in the messenger instead of the merit in the message. That feeling is not a character flaw. It's the same reflex that killed Semmelweis, running in a different room. The doctors in Vienna weren't incompetent. They were identity protective. Admitting the data meant admitting they had been the cause of death, not the cure for it. The strongest resistance to new evidence rarely comes from the least capable in a room. It comes from the most invested ones. The people with the most identity wrapped up in the old answer are the ones least equipped to hear the new one. The part almost nobody quotes about Semmelweis is that he understood exactly what was happening to him. He wrote about it directly. He described watching hospitals absorb his evidence and reject it, not on scientific grounds, but on social ones. He knew the problem was never the data. The problem was what the data would cost the people who accepted it. So he kept bringing better evidence, cleaner numbers, more hospitals, more years and time. It made no difference. In some documented cases, more disconfirming evidence doesn't loosen a person's grip on a false belief. It tightens it. Each new fact gets reframed as another attack to defend against, rather than information to weigh. No institution avoids this reflex entirely. Every institution is made of people protecting an identity, which means every institution will feel this exact pull. What separates the ones that survive is not the absence of the reflex, it's whether they build something strong enough to let the evidence through anyway, even while the reflex is firing. The evidence was never the problem. It was never about the evidence. The reflex doesn't announce itself. It just fires.